Hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. And today we're going to be looking at something I love to do, positional needs for the Saints. I promised I was going to do a video like this once a month. The first one we did it was in September, I believe, after we had lost our first, maybe we were 0-2. So at this point in the season, we are 1-4, and positional needs have adjusted once again. It's real easy and fun to do this type of video for the Saints because we have positional needs everywhere. We're in the middle of a rebuild. The roster wasn't very good to start with for poor Kellen Moore. And yeah, you can't really go wrong when picking a position of need for the Saints. In my first video, I just touched on 10 that were important. In this video, I'm going to rank them, but I'm still going to keep them separated. The top line for offense, the bottom line for defense. And this is how I have it right now. So I'm going with top needs on offense, wide receiver, offensive guard, quarterback, tight end, offensive tackle, backup, of course. And on defense, my five top needs for the defense would include cornerback, defensive end, defensive tackle, edge rusher, and safety. Yeah, when I list five on each side of the ball, it pretty much covers everything. And the truth of the matter is, a couple of these, I'm talking about more than one. So on the offense, we really need two offensive guards, not just one. And on defense, we kind of really need two cornerbacks, not just one. So after this big win the Saints had against the Giants this past weekend, as I'm recording this, some of you may feel differently about what this team really needs. So I figured I would give you my list and we'll go and break it down. We'll pull up the offense, we'll pull up the defense, and we'll talk about the needs. And I'm going to do this once a month. It'll change ever so slightly, but a lot of the stuff I'm going to say is the same because, yeah, the needs are the same. So here's the offense first. And let's talk about that top line, starting with what I think is the number one need for the team, wide receiver. We have a pretty decent group with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed as your starters. And then, you hope Vele turns into something as a big body. You've got Brandon Cooks with his veteran ability, and you've still got Mason Tipton, who, might be able to fill in for Olave or Rashid and do some of the same things they do because of his speed. But yeah, all three of those guys lack size. Vele's got size. Cooks doesn't have size either. The only wide receiver on our team that has any size is Vele. And we feel it sometimes with Olave as our number one guy. Okay. But sometimes he doesn't make the catches a number one would make. You know, the target share, 13 targets, 7 catches, stuff like that. It's not going to cut it. We need something better from a number one. Olave, at the same time, is a good player, so I still think it's the most important need. And another reason why is because we're probably going to trade Olave. I don't see how we can pay Olave and Rashid big bucks, both of them big bucks, and continue to have the production we've had from these two starting receivers. Remember, these guys have been our starters regardless of the system and the quarterback. They've still been our starters for the last 3 years. And yeah, we're not seeing it. So I think you trade Olave before the trade deadline and you make wide receiver a priority and you go and get somebody that's a difference maker, that's a true number one, and a guy with size. And if Vele can develop into something like that, we gave up a fourth round pick for him. If he develops into something like that, that'd be great. But until I see it, I'm going to assume you're going to be missing either Olave or Rashid over the next 1 or 2 years because of contract situations. So either Vele steps up or wide receivers are number one. Okay. Next is offensive guard, and I could easily accept this as the number one position of need for the Saints because we have two starters that aren't very good. Trevor Penning's learning the position right now. He's only been healthy for 2 games. So we'll see how Penning develops. If Penning continues to play okay and progressively gets better, and you're comfortable with Penning being your starting left guard, well, then you better be comfortable to pay him because his contract ends this year. So, best case scenario at left guard, Trevor Penning develops into a solid starter, and you only have to pay him 4 or 5 million a year, and you got yourself a starting guard. That's best case scenario at the cheapest. Personally, I think Penning's going to end up getting closer to 8 million a year, even if he is just an average starter, because he's got a lot of ability, and coaching staffs think they can coach it out of him. So that's an issue. Do you want to pay Trevor Penning $8 million a year to be an average starter? You kind of did that with Cesar Ruiz. That's your other problem. Right guard Cesar Ruiz. You're paying him, and he's below average right now. Your depth at guard doesn't help the situation either because Dylan Redunds is just not a guy I want starting half of my games. And Torricelli Simpkins has a long way to go before he can be considered a viable starter in the league. He's looking fine now. He has a lot of development that he has to have before I'm comfortable with him replacing Ruiz. So let's say you keep Penning, you pay him 5 million a year, and then you replace Cesar Ruiz with Simpkins. And Simpkins develops and gets to be at least as consistent as Ruiz. I mean, that's a possibility, and you don't have to worry about guard at all. But I think you're just messing around here. An undrafted guy in Simpkins performing better than Ruiz, who's a first rounder. Okay, that could happen because Ruiz is performing so poorly. But I still think there are guards you can get in the second, third round of a draft that would have the talent level of a guy like a Dylan Redunds, or quite honestly, a Cesar Ruiz, and most definitely better than Simpkins. Simpkins was undrafted for a reason. There's a lot of hope that he's going to develop, but I stand firm that guard is very important. Wide receiver and guard, my top two needs. And the third offensive need is quarterback. And yeah, you can make that the number one need too, and you could have a good argument for it. Easy. It's the most important position on the team. If you're not winning because of Rattler or Shuck, then you go ahead and grab a guy. If there's a guy. And if there's a guy, you're probably going to need a top five pick to get him. So this is why I have quarterback at number three, because Rattler's doing okay, and we don't know what we have with Shuck. But if you win a few games and you don't have a top five pick, then you're probably out of, the quarterback lottery, the franchise quarterback lottery. The guy that's so obviously going to be a franchise quarterback is going to get taken in the top five. A guy like Tyler Shuck or a guy like Jackson Dart, maybe he falls later on in the first round. Maybe if the Saints have the ninth overall pick and they like a guy that's not a consensus top five guy, then yeah, you can get a quarterback without having a top five pick, but you might be getting another Tyler Shuck or another Spencer Rattler. So that's what I'm. That's why I still have quarterback here. It's third because I think if you get yourself a starting guard and a big wide receiver, a complete tight end, then it'll make these red zone woes go away, and then we score some more points. Rattler continues his development, or if Shuck proves to be a good player, and then maybe quarterback's not the greatest need. I mean, you know, it's kind of like having Baker Mayfield. Yeah, he's performing good now. He's not going to be your quarterback forever, but I don't know. Spencer Rattler might end up being a perennial backup in this league, but if you put enough pieces around him, you might start winning some games. But I've got it here at number three because if you have a top five pick, you almost certainly have to go the route of quarterback. And Then again, you could go for something else. Number four on my offensive needs list is tight end, that complete tight end. Jawan Johnson isn't a complete tight end. Besides dropping the ball, he's constantly injured. He's always hobbling around. So, yeah, I think an undrafted wide receiver in Jawan Johnson shouldn't be beating off real competition. Okay. And when I say real, I mean draft a tight end in the mid rounds, please. Get a tight end in the third round or fourth round. There's so many opportunities to get so many good tight ends in the last three drafts with a third round pick or a fourth round pick. A guy who I know would be starting and performing with this team because all of the guys I wanted are starting and performing all around the league. Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, even a guy like Michael Mayer. If he was on our team, I bet he'd be more productive than what he's doing with the Raiders. So Bellamy, God, you shed so much. My bellboy loves to be next to me when I'm recording, and he sheds crazy. So anyway, number one tight end, all around tight end, a guy who can run block, a guy who is gonna be a good receiver. The third or fourth round tight end. Come in here and just be solid. Foster Moreau type, but a better athlete, a better player than Foster Moreau. Foster Moreau's got a lot of X Factor stuff to him that we love. But when it's all said and done, you're not going to march down the field targeting Foster Moreau every play. Okay, we need a difference maker at tight end. Can make this offense go. The last offensive need that I'm going to talk about is offensive tackle, and of course we got our two starters of the future in Banks and Fuanga, but we need depth. Awesome Richards isn't so awesome that we can't improve there. So you get Landon Young back next year. Maybe you resign him. Maybe he doesn't get hurt, and maybe he is an okay fill-in swing type of tackle. But then again, Landon Young was what, a sixth, seventh round pick. He's never been a great player. You love the versatility to be able to play guard and tackle. But yeah, if you had to start half a season with Landon Young, you'd be in trouble. So backup offensive tackle is something that, we can look at. And maybe if you get a guy in the fourth round or fifth round, he might have more ability than Landon Young physically. So, all right, we're going to pull down the offense and we're bringing up the defense and we're going to talk about my top five needs for the defense. And this was tough. I would rather the Saints focus on wide receiver, guard, tight end before you ever really touch defense, but you need defense because you've got a linebacker and Demario Davis who might retire at any second. Now, we've got good youth at linebacker. It's not mentioned here. We've got good youth at linebacker. But yeah, defensive needs, it's almost as if you have to address defense. There's other things to look at too. The safety situation at the end of this list is a head scratcher for me. After Jonas Sanker, I'm not sure what is going on. So, and that's the fifth need. So what I'm saying is all five of these defensive needs are pretty much even. And there's an argument to be made you don't need to do it and that you really need to do it. I'll start with cornerback, and the reason it's number one for me is I think you need more than one. Alontae Taylor is going to need a new contract next year. Do you want to pay Alontae Taylor $20 million a year? No, you don't. And I don't either. If he would be just a strictly nickel cornerback, he would still demand $15 million a year. And we know Taylor has the ability to make plays. We haven't seen it, not in this defense and not yet. And by the end of the year, we're going to have a better grasp, but I'm leaning right now that you're not going to want to pay Alontae Taylor $15-20 million a year. I'm leaning that way. You didn't want to pay Paulson and Debo that much, and he was a starting cornerback for you. I don't think you want to pay Alontae Taylor that much. So that's a star player. That would be a special guy, not necessarily an outside cornerback, but a special cornerback who can play a safety type role, a linebacker type role, a nickel, and probably have to mix and match and get on the outside some. it would take a special cornerback. And if you do draft a cornerback high and he's just a purely outside guy, well, then that's okay because he's got to beat out Quincy Riley, who's a fifth round pick, who's had one start under his belt so far. It looked good against a weak wide receiving core with the Giants. And I think Quincy was a fourth round pick. Excuse me. I think Quincy was a fourth round pick for a reason. He makes plays on the ball, but he gets beat too. And we're going to see how good Quincy Riley is. If he can start the rest of the year and he plays like he did this past week against the Giants, then and then of course Kool-Aid McKinstry, who played so good against the Giants, he was the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. Then yeah, you don't think you need a cornerback at all. But you certainly need at least one if you're not willing to pay God belly. If you're not willing to pay Alante Taylor a ton of money. So you're going to need at least one. And that may just be a nickelback. Maybe you just find yourself the best nickelback in the draft. I've been looking for the best nickelback in the draft for years. I liked Cole Bishop as a nickel when he came out. I liked Tyreek Smith as a nickel when he came out. I liked Max Melton as a nickel when he came out. There were lots of Sainer still, who's doing such a good job for a little guy with the Commanders. As a nickelback, yeah, I've been focusing on nickel for a couple of years now and hoping Taylor would just develop into that all-star. But the rest of the year will tell if Taylor's the guy. And if he's the guy, he's the star guy. And you may still need some outside help because the book is not finished on Quincy Riley or Kool-Aid McKinstry. Kool-Aid McKinstry does well against smaller, fast receivers, but against the big guys, he has trouble. And we have some big guys lined up. Okay, we got to play Atlanta twice. That's Drake London. We're going to see how Kool-Aid responds to playing Drake London twice a year. I don't know if he's going to fare very well if he doesn't improve against big wide receivers. We got the Panthers twice a year. They just drafted Tetero McMillan. If Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to get burnt by Marvin Harrison Jr., then he can probably get burnt by a guy the same exact size and everything as Harrison with Tetero McMillan. So you got him with the Panthers twice a year you got to deal with. It's not to mention the Buccaneers who have Mike Evans and Amika Ibuka. Now that's a wide receiving tandem that I don't know if Kool-Aid can handle either one of those guys. So we've got that's six games right there that Kool-Aid's going to have to prove his worth. And if Kool-Aid struggles in those six games against those three divisional rivals, then yeah, you're going to need to address cornerback. And the same thing goes for Riley. Riley's going to have to prove it. He's going to have to keep doing it. So there's possibility you're replacing Alante Taylor and getting a nickel and having to upgrade on the outside, depending on how Riley and McKinstry hold up. We love what they did against the Giants. Even our divisional rivals have better wide receiving cores than the Giants. So you may need two cornerbacks. That's why it's number one on the list. Number two is technically defensive end, but I would kind of say my number two and my number three need is just defensive line in general, because there's an argument to be made for both. When I think of defensive tackle, I think of Davin Gotchaw and Christian Boyd. I think of a nose tackle type. And Gotchaw, of course, is no spring chicken, and Boyd is a six-round pick from a small school. So there's a chance you can get a nose tackle type in the second round, third round. He's going to come in here. He's going to be the future, and he's going to be a staple in this Brandon Staley defense, a necessary piece. The defensive lineman that's always in the middle of the defensive line, that's there to stop the run and can get something going if a pass rush is needed. Gottschall doesn't give you a pass rush. Boyd is, like I said, I'm going to always say it. Yeah, I like Boyd. He's a six-round pick from a small school. We can do better than that, especially with a second or third round pick. You hope anyway. Now, we've got the injured Vernon Broughton to think about. He is a bigger guy who can flex and play on the line, defensive tackle, defensive end, big end, whatever you need. And so when he comes back next year, maybe he's a piece and it alleviates the need for the big middle of the defensive line piece. there's usually two bodies there that are on the line, and you're expecting them to do some work. And everybody else, they flex. Sometimes they bring in the outside linebacker, edge rusher type. Sometimes they have the big defensive ends on the side of the defensive tackle. But yeah, when you try to go big against the run, it's we've had our struggles. Brian Bresee is trying to make headway at defensive end, technically, in stopping the run. And then on the other side, we're always playing Nathan Shepard. Sometimes we roll in Jonathan Bullard. Like I said, Vernon Broughton was healthy, he'd be playing too. But yeah, I'm kind of sick and tired of having Nathan Shepard on the team and expecting him to get, 45 snaps, 50 snaps, and stop the run and rush the passer. I think we can improve on Nathan Shepard and Jonathan Bullard. Whether Vernon Broughton turns out to be that piece or not, I don't know. And like I said, I'm still worried about Brzee and his run stopping. So defensive line as a whole, I would probably go, with a smaller defensive tackle who's got some ability to rush the passer if he's still strong against the run and expect him to play a defensive end type spot. But of course, getting that big nose tackle who can take the place of Davin Gotchaw in the future is always going to be an important piece for this team. Now, number 4 on my list is edge rusher. And whether that's an outside linebacker or whether that's a quick, speedy defensive end, take your pick. The only reason I have it fourth on my list is because, yeah, our bodies are good right now. If Chase Young comes back and he's supposed to play this weekend, maybe. If Chase Young comes back and he and Carl Granderson are a great duo, then you've got your starters. Yay. And then Cam Jordan, who's playing well this year, should retire at any moment. So you still need some help. But without having Young this year, it's really bothered me. The lack of pressure, the lack of sacks just seems like we're not getting a lot there. I mean, Grando's fine. Bellamy, I don't want to play right now. Grando's fine, you know, give him that other sack and, that got taken from him this past week. And he's among the league leaders. And yeah, he might be a big ticket for real kind of guy as an edge. You get Chase Young back and he's a for real guy. And then, yeah, you don't have to worry about edge at all. So if those two play and play well, then you don't need your starters, at least not for the next couple of years. And so edge rusher is kind of like whatever, especially if Cam wants to go another year. Chris Rump keeps playing well. Maybe we see some progress from Fadil Diggs. So it may not be an important one at all. So I've got it at number 4 here. However, when you draft in the first round, and if you're drafting especially around the top 10, there's a chance for you to get a difference maker at edge rusher. It's always an important piece to look at the top of the draft, along with cornerback and quarterback and wide receiver and offensive tackle, that edge rusher. And out of all of those, you might want to get a big bodied wide receiver. You might want to get an edge rusher. You might want to get a cornerback. That would be where I would focus. I don't want to spend a second overall pick on a quarterback unless he's going to be the face of the franchise. And if we do that, then you trade one of the quarterbacks we have for whatever you can get because you're not going to have 3 young guys in there. You just trade Rattler or something. But so anyway, edge rusher, it's always important. It can always be your first round pick, and you're probably going to, let's face it, Carl Granderson's a great player. He's an undrafted guy. You get a first round pick like Chase Young to actually play like a first round pick, and yeah, you're doing great. You still want that third guy when Cam retires. And yeah, an early draft pick at edge rusher would not break my heart. And last but not least for the defense, safety. Everybody loves Jonas Sanker right now. We ain't got to worry about it. And hey, Justin Reed signed to 3 years, so we're paying him 10 plus million for the next 2 years after this year. If Justin Reed can turn a corner sometime in this system this year, then maybe Justin Reed and Jonas Sankers are starters of the future. Jordan Howden has been hot and cold, but he looked really good in this last week. As a matter of fact, this year is the first year where he's shown any ability to make plays. If he can continue to do that, then you've got a nice little backup. Terrell Burgess, you can't rely on him to be a, a backup safety for you. I mean, Terrell Burgess has a lot of years in this league, and yeah, he's usually a weak link when he's out there. So what I'm saying is Justin Reed hasn't been it. Jonas Sanker and Jordan Howden, well, I've always wanted to get somebody better than Howden. If Howden can keep making plays, he proves himself to be more worthy than I thought he was, but I still think you can improve on Howden. I need to see more from Justin Reed. I'm not seeing it. You re-sign Julian Blackman, perhaps, and then Blackman, Reed, and Jonas Sanker would be a nice little threesome, and Howden would make four. So you got Ugo Amadi to flex. Maybe Burgess hangs around in the practice squad, and then you're great at safety. You don't need to address it at all. And that's the reason why it's last on my list for defense. But it's still important. You can improve from Justin Reed. As of this point right now, certainly. All right, there you go. There is my video about our positional needs. I want you to let me know in the comments what you think. How would you rank these things? What would be the most important? If you want to mix up offense, defense, and just tell me that Blake Groupie is the most important thing you need to replace. Because, yeah, Blake Groupie could have been on this list. I know a lot of you would say it's important to replace him. You draft a really good kicker, the best kicker in college, you could probably get him in the sixth round and then you tell Blake Groupie goodbye. I just think that kicking it's one of those things. It's like a golfer when he's having a bad week or a bad month and he's just got to work out the kinks. That's what I feel like a kicker is. Sometimes you have slumps. You stick with a guy, eventually he gets out of it. Morton Anderson was never a great percentage kicker. I think his career percentage was like 77% for the Saints. It didn't matter because he made three out of every four kicks. He might have missed one out of every four, but the three he made were from 50 plus, and nobody else was doing it back then. He could kick them 60 yards, so we all took it. Oh, Morton missed one. Shucks. Doesn't matter because he's going to make a 58-yarder to win the game later on, and then he would, and so we would forgive him. But yeah, when you have a kicker nowadays, you expect 90% effective rate, and that's just it's hard for me to see it. I need Blake Groupie to be better than what he is right now. He can't be missing one out of every five kicks. He needs to go at least a month without missing a kick before we forget about replacing Blake Groupie. I have to mention it though. So subscribe to Rosenville 10. I'll be doing another positional need breakdown next month for the month of November. And until then, of course, I cover every game. I preview and review every game. 2 videos a week, one preview, one review, and then you get the extra video. This is the positional needs. Next week, it might be college quarterbacks, or it might be college wide receivers, or it might be another mock draft, or it might be some other take on our beloved Saints. But subscribe, and you'll get nothing but Saints. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?